From dictators to princesses, when a celebrity dies unexpectedly, the public wants answers. Sometimes the physical objects around them can provide clues about their final moments. The room where Michael Jackson died had an array of medical items, including oxygen tanks, an IV stand, and the deadly cocktail of prescription drugs that killed him.
This wasn't just this one night. This was administered in him on an ongoing basis.
While Jackson's cause of death was detailed in his autopsy reports, the items found in his home after his death reveal his dark, disturbing side. In addition to pornographic magazines and DVDs featuring both adult men and women, investigators found several art books containing images of nude and semi-nude children. Then there was a pair of items collectively known to police as evidence item number 510. One was a bag filled with clothes, including children's clothes. The other was a plastic Disneyland bag full of underwear and bloody bed sheets. In 1962, Hollywood icon Marilyn Monroe was found dead by her housekeeper and her psychiatrist. She was in her own bed, and the cause of death seemed clear: overdose. In addition to her phone, which she seemed to have been either holding or reaching for at the time of her death, there were multiple pill bottles near the bed, including various uppers and downers which Monroe was known to take regularly, often along with alcohol.
I think you're the saddest girl I ever met.
You're the first man ever said that.
One bottle should have contained nearly 50 Nembutal. Nembutal is a barbiturate often used to put patients under for surgery. Monroe had been prescribed the medication just days before her death, but was only supposed to take one pill a night. When her body was found, the bottle was empty. Because the deputy medical examiner who performed Monroe's autopsy reported no sign of the drug in her stomach, conspiracy theories have sprung up around her death. Some believe that the Nembutal bottle found in her room was part of a cover-up. These theories were so prevalent that the case was reopened in 1982. During the second investigation, it was determined that there was enough time between when Monroe would have taken the medication and the autopsy for all traces of it to have left her stomach. 28-year-old Heath Ledger's body was found in the bedroom of his New York City apartment. Also in the room were an array of drugs, including Xanax, Valium, and Ambien, the presence of which dominated the news cycle as stunned fans grappled with Ledger's sudden death. But judging by some of the other items in Ledger's room at the time of his death, including the Malcolm Gladwell book Blink and a film script based on it, he was looking to the future.
Heath was the most alive human. If it wasn't on the edge, it didn't interest him.
The film was already in the works, with Stephen Gaghan set to direct. Leonardo DiCaprio had originally been attached to star, but during the development phase, the role was reimagined as a much younger man, and Ledger seemed perfect for the part. Gaghan stated in a podcast that he hoped it was going to be the first of many collaborations between them, but it wasn't to be. In the 1970s, Nancy Spungen was a well-known punk rock groupie with a reputation for supplying hard drugs to members of the bands she followed. After traveling to England, she began dating the Sex Pistols replacement bassist Sid Vicious, and they were soon inseparable. But over time, the two became increasingly volatile. Spungen slashed her wrists, and they dove deeper into the drug scene. Then, in 1978, Spungen was found stabbed to death in New York City's famous Chelsea Hotel. Vicious was arrested for her murder. Exactly what happened the night of Spungen's death is unknown. While it's still generally believed that Vicious killed her, some have suggested that he was actually incapacitated due to his drug use at the time. The items found at the crime scene offer some insight into the couple's chaotic life, but offer few clues about the crime. The forensic crime scene unit, which investigated the scene, was focused on finding the knife. They found plenty. Vicious had a knife collection. In addition, they found several blood-soaked hypodermic needles and barbiturates in the room with Spungen's body. CSU also found all of Spungen and Vicious's possessions, including a massive hoard of stockings and photos of the couple stuffed into plastic Harrods bags. The contributing factors to the 1997 death of Princess Diana, including her driver's extreme intoxication, the fact that she wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and the paparazzi chasing her at high rates of speed, have been discussed and debated for over 20 years. Exactly what the crash looked like is thankfully mostly unknown, as a paparazzi who attempted to photograph it had their cameras confiscated. But the police chief who led the investigation at the scene of the accident, Martin Monte, described arriving at the scene. Monte was there to notice all the details like shattered glass and debris, but perhaps the most poignant discovery were the tiny pearls scattered around the crash. It's believed the princess was wearing them when the accident occurred. In 1983, Tennessee Williams, the playwright who wrote A Streetcar Named Desire, was found dead in his New York City hotel room by his secretary. According to the autopsy, he died of asphyxiation after choking on a small plastic cap from an eye drop or nasal spray bottle.
He never could open the caps to bottles. If nobody was there to open them, he'd open them with his teeth.
The cap may have been the cause of death, but it wasn't the only culprit. Also found in the room with Williams were an empty bottle of wine and an assortment of pills. Williams had taken secobarbital, a barbiturate prescribed for insomnia, before he died. Williams' long-term issues with sleeping pills and alcohol were well known. Earlier in life, he had been prescribed a variety of drugs by Dr. Max Jacobson, better known as Dr. Feelgood. Jacobson was known for injecting his celebrity patients with amphetamines. While Jacobson refused to treat Williams after an incident in which the playwright had reportedly been drinking in the medical office, Williams found other doctors willing to prescribe what he thought he needed. Ernest Hemingway led a bold, exciting life, but he was believed to have struggled with bipolar disorder, alcoholism, and depression.
He was a big game hunter. He liked to brawl and drink, and he loved nature.
Around the time of his death, he'd been in inpatient treatment for his mental health following several suicide attempts. He'd just been released from the hospital against the wishes of his wife, Mary. 2 days later, he died by suicide. The gun he used and the key that allowed him to access it had been the source of controversy ever since. Hemingway's wife knew that guns posed a risk to her suicidal husband, so she locked them in a storage room, then put the keys on top of their kitchen window. Hemingway's son Patrick later questioned her reasoning, but Mary replied that she didn't feel that she had the right to keep her husband's belongings from him. She found his body in the entryway of their home, dressed in his bathrobe with one of those shotguns. When Hollywood star Grace Kelly, known for films like Rear Window and High Noon, married the Prince of Monaco in 1956, it seemed like the beginning of a fairy tale. Nearly 30 years later, in 1982, her car careened through a retaining wall before crashing more than 100 feet off a cliff. The only people in the car, a Green Rover 3500, were Kelly and her daughter Stephanie. Stephanie had been on her way to a new school in Paris, and the backseat was piled high with everything she was bringing with her. Interestingly, Kelly rarely drove herself anywhere. Some have suggested that Stephanie was actually behind the wheel when she and her mother got into an argument, or that the car's brakes malfunctioned. The truth was likely even simpler than that. Kelly was feeling unwell on the day of her death, but even on a good day, she usually had a driver. She got behind the wheel on that particular day because, with all of Stephanie's things in the back seat, there wasn't room for 3 people in the tiny car. There is evidence Kelly may have had a mild stroke while driving, but all things combined, the exact cause of the accident will likely never be known. Most people know that Adolf Hitler died by suicide in a bunker under the streets of Berlin as the city was taken by Allied forces. But while the term bunker might conjure up images of a dark, cramped bomb shelter, the underground complex where Hitler and his inner circle spent their final days was opulent. The entrance was lined with a red carpet, the walls were hung with stolen art, and Hitler was attended by a full staff. Allied soldiers found the bunker partially burned, but the art and high-end furniture that remained, some of it blood-stained, painted a picture of the oddly luxurious lifestyle Hitler led while hiding out. That is, before handing out cyanide capsules to his inner circle, feeding one to his dog, and shooting himself. Other items found in and around the bunker say less about Hitler's final moments and the aftermath. There was his personal safe, which had been opened and emptied, and there were empty gas canisters outside, used by Nazis to burn the bodies of Hitler and his new wife Eva Braun to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. Zelda Fitzgerald created an image of herself that was larger than life. Her reputation as the quintessential 1920s flapper was so large it eclipsed the real Zelda, a dancer, artist, and writer so eloquent that her husband, novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald, lifted some of his best lines straight from her journals. But Zelda had significant mental health struggles and spent much of her life in hospitals and treatment facilities, concluding with a psychiatric hospital in Asheville, North Carolina. That hospital caught fire, killing 9 patients, including Zelda, who was sedated at the time and had no chance of escape. Although it's never been confirmed, legend has it that her body was discovered with a single charred ballet slipper. Whether she really was wearing dancing shoes at the time of her death, or the legend is simply another piece of her larger-than-life story, will forever be a mystery. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin's decline began in 1945 when a serious medical event, possibly a stroke or heart attack, took a major toll on both his physical and mental health, not that he would admit it. In 1951, a doctor advised Stalin to take better care of himself. He was immediately charged with spying for daring to question the dictator's physical condition. This kicked off a countrywide persecution of medical professionals. Their combined expertise might have been helpful if he'd believed them.
All the best doctors are dead.
On March 1, 1953, Stalin didn't come out of his chambers and didn't call for food or work. His staff, terrified to disobey the order never to enter his private rooms uninvited, didn't investigate until 11 p.m.
Should we investigate?
Should you shut the up before you get us both killed?
They found Stalin lying on the floor, dying. On the floor with him were a newspaper and a pocket watch. The watch had stopped at 6:30 a.m., indicating that he'd been on the floor all day without assistance. The only other thing of note was a bottle of mineral water on a nearby table, leading some to theorize that he was getting up to have a drink when he collapsed. In 1994, Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain died by suicide in the greenhouse above his garage. Cobain's struggles with depression and addiction were known to his loved ones, who'd attempted to get him help, even holding an intervention for him a month before his death. Cobain checked into a clinic temporarily, but returned home and locked himself inside. Exactly what happened before his death is unknown. However, reports about the few items found with the body have helped paint a picture of Cobain's final moments. On the ground were his hat, which served as a kind of disguise in public, the cigar box where he kept the drugs he took before his death, and his wallet, open to his ID, seemingly to help whoever found him identify his body. Along with the gun he used, investigators also found a suicide note stabbed into the soil of a planter with the pen. If you or anyone you know struggles with depression or suicidal ideation, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org.